A striking silver-haired man introduces himself as Lucian. He's practically glowing, leaving the purple-haired lady and her maid totally stunned by his aura. When he gently calls out to her, she snaps out of her daze with a sharp gasp. Quickly regaining her composure, she introduces herself as Lucian Lilac. Pernia politely apologizes for meeting her so late in the day. They sit down for a quiet tea, and he explains that his recent war campaign dragged on longer than expected. Pernia smiles warmly and assures him it's completely fine. But internally, she knows exactly who he is, the decorated hero of the Empire. He's also the fiancé the Emperor forced upon her 2 years ago. But the real kicker, he's actually a side character from a fantasy novel she read in her past life. A tragic side character who eventually goes completely rogue and wipes out half the Empire. The novel was called Estelle the Saintess. The female led Estelle was supposed to just be a symbol of pure holiness. Instead, she was so charming that literally every good guy in the story fell head over heels for her. And sitting right in the middle of her massive harem was the Empire's ultimate hero, Lucian. In her past life, Pernia used to rage at her phone, so frustrated that this legendary warrior acted like a total simp around the Saintess. Honestly, she always preferred his character over the main love interest anyway. But now she somehow occupies the body of Pernia, the annoying fiancé he eventually murders. She recalls Lucian's tragic lore. He loved the Saintess since childhood but hid it because he was born with red eyes. Despite his crazy battlefield achievements, everyone whispered that he was using demonic magic. Believing he was cursed, he forced himself to bottle up his feelings for her. But the second he found out the Saintess was dating the Crown Prince, his mind completely snapped. He finally confessed his love in tears. He literally begged on his knees for her to choose him instead. But the Saintess shut him down cold. After all, she was already locked in with the prince. Overwhelmed by a toxic cocktail of grief and jealousy, Lucian loses his grip on reality. He goes full demon mode and slaughters everyone who had ever crossed him. And unfortunately, his fiancée is right at the top of that hit list. The original Pernia died screaming at him, calling him a monster. Back in the present, Pernia anxiously sips her tea, painfully aware she's sitting across from a ticking time bomb. She desperately wants to break off the engagement, but defying the Emperor is a straight-up death sentence. She nervously taps her fingers on her dress, absolutely terrified to say the wrong thing. But then she steals a glance and is instantly mesmerized by his unbelievably gorgeous face. Suddenly, she spots something and jumps up, yelling that he's hurt. Lucian flinches, touching a small scratch on his neck and brushing it off as nothing. Pernia just stares at him in pure disbelief. She remembers from the novel that he literally has self-healing powers. So why is he walking around leaving a fresh cut untreated? Remembering her maid's frantic packing earlier, Pernia digs through her dress. She triumphantly pulls out a simple band-aid. Without hesitating, she leans in uncomfortably close, totally catching him off guard. She carefully slaps the bandage on his chest, scolding him that even small injuries need proper care so they don't get infected. Flustered by her sudden proximity, Lucian stammers and awkwardly slides back. He quickly changes the subject, noting that she's very different from the rumors he's heard. When she asks what he means, he smoothly claims people say she's just very honest. Pernia knows he's sugarcoating it to cover up her terrible reputation. The original Pernia was an absolute menace of a woman. If she were sitting here right now, she'd be glaring at him with pure disgust. But Pernia clenches her fists, fully determined to rewrite her doomed fate. Internally, Pernia declares her new brand, a peace-loving citizen who just wants to save the doomed side character. She smoothly waves off her terrible reputation, claiming the rumors are just bored nobles gossiping. Flashing her sweetest smile, she playfully demands he agree she's nothing like the horrible stories. Lucian is momentarily stunned by her charm, blushing softly as he quickly apologizes for his rudeness. Pernia plays it cool on the outside, but internally she is absolutely melting. His genuine, beaming smile is hitting her like a massive critical strike to the heart. She mentally celebrates, convinced her chances of getting brutally murdered just dropped by a solid 0.01%. All the previous awkwardness completely evaporates. From that moment on, their little tea date flows perfectly. With the ice finally broken, Pernia decides it's time to tackle the main quest. She sets down her teacup, casually shifting gears. Leaning in, she mentions an upcoming event he definitely knows about. But Lucian just blinks at her, totally lost. She clarifies she's talking about their massive engagement party happening in exactly 2 weeks. It's being hosted at her family's estate. Lucian quickly nods, recovering from his lapse in memory. Pernia notes that they actually got engaged 2 whole years ago but never officially celebrated. The delay was entirely because Lucian was deployed on the front lines this whole time. But the second her dad got the memo that the war was over, he instantly locked in a date to secure the bag. She explains her father is going absolutely all out, knowing this will be Lucian's first grand public appearance since his victory. Lucian politely thanks her for the effort. Pernia knows that despite the demonic rumors, the guy is still the undisputed, absolute goat of the Empire's knights. So naturally, everyone and their mother is dying for an invite to this party. In fact, her dad got so hyped that he totally blew past the budget decorating the banquet hall. But Pernia started stressing when she saw the guest list. Her dad literally invited every high roller in the capital. The place is going to be packed to the brim with prestigious nobles. And worst of all, that includes Estelle the Saintess. Pernia knows Lucian is down horrendous for Estelle, but the girl is totally clueless. Because despite being a legendary war hero, he's an absolute coward when it comes to love. In the original novel, he was so terrified of his feelings getting exposed that he dodged her like the plague. Pernia absolutely hated that frustrating plotline. She figures if he had just manned up and shown a little emotion, maybe he wouldn't have gone completely psycho later. So she decides to play wingman and serve him an opportunity on a silver platter. She casually suggests that since the Saintess is attending, they should ask her for a blessing dance. It's a traditional hand-in-hand dance that doesn't actually require Estelle to use any divine holy power. It's super common for her to dance with the hosts or future brides and grooms, giving Pernia the perfect excuse. She giggles innocently, asking if he's cool with the plan. But internally, she's rubbing her hands together like a cartoon villain. Since he always avoids physical contact, this will trap him. They'll be forced to hold hands, gaze deeply into each other's eyes, and feel the romantic tension. She thinks this is the ultimate setup for Estelle to finally catch feelings for him. If this works, it could totally derail the novel's tragic ending. And even if it fails, playing matchmaker will definitely earn her some major brownie points with the future tyrant. She stares at him intensely, practically begging him mentally to take the bait. But Lucian immediately shoots it down, politely stating it's a bad idea. Pernia is flabbergasted, mentally screaming at him for fumbling such a massive bag. She expects him to drop some lame excuse to cover up his secret crush. But looking away in pure embarrassment, Lucian softly confesses that he's just a really terrible dancer. Pernia assumes he's totally capping to dodge the situation. But then she spots his white-knuckled grip and realizes this legendary warrior is dead serious. Pernia is completely stunned, realizing this juicy detail was never mentioned in the original novel. But thinking about his tragic backstory, it actually makes total sense since he's been fighting in the trenches since he was 12. The poor guy rarely went to banquets and literally never had the chance to learn, leaving him looking visibly deflated. He officially apologizes to her for his lack of skill. The atmosphere instantly gets super heavy, and Pernia panics, thinking all her hard work to befriend him is going down the drain. She desperately starts rambling, telling him his real talent is wrecking enemies on the battlefield, so who cares about twirling on a dance floor? But she instantly cringes, realizing she absolutely fumbled the pep talk and sounds like she's just making fun of him. Quickly pivoting, she boldly offers to teach him how to dance herself. Lucian looks up, completely caught off guard. She points out that he'll have to dance with her at the upcoming party anyway. And at this point, it's way too late to hire a professional tutor. Internally, she is sweating, determined to try absolutely everything to get on this guy's good side. She hits him with a light guilt trip, saying a true gentleman surely wouldn't disrespect his fiancée by refusing her help. And just like that, he takes the bait. Later that evening, Pernia arrives back at her estate looking completely drained. She's immediately ambushed by her father, Marquis Lilac, who starts yapping nonstop about how awkward first dates can be. He laughs at his own lame jokes, while Pernia just stands there looking completely over it. She mentally notes that her dad literally talks more than anyone she knows and mostly tunes him out. She gives him a dry, simple confirmation that the meeting went well. When he keeps prying about whether Lucian looked injured from the war, she cuts him off, says he's fine, and escapes to her room. But as she walks away, her dad yells out the harsh reality. She absolutely must marry this guy to save their family. Safely in her room, she sighs at the ridiculous situation. Turns out her dad's businesses completely tanked, leaving them broke with only a fancy title, while Lucian is the Empire's hottest rising star. The original Pernia made things worse by constantly showing pure disgust for her forced fiancé. But the new Pernia flops onto her bed, declaring her dad doesn't need to stress anymore. Because she has zero intention of marrying him, she's going to break it off herself. To pull this off, she hatches the ultimate master plan. Since Lucian won't want a forced marriage either, she just needs to act as his wingman and help him win over Estelle. Fired up, she calls her maid to bring her a pen and paper. She quickly drafts the first letter to the Saintess, officially requesting the blessing dance. She worries it might seem a bit bold since they don't know each other, but trusts Estelle will agree for Lucian's sake. Next, she writes to Lucian, letting him know she's coming over tomorrow for dance lessons. She pauses, realizing signing it as his fiancé makes her sound way too clingy. She quickly scratches that out and writes ally instead, keeping things strictly business. She hands the letters off to her maid with strict orders to deliver them ASAP. After all, you gotta strike while the iron is hot. The very next day, she arrives at Lucian's temporary estate in the capital. The mansion is absolutely massive, proving just how much the Emperor favors him. She gulps nervously but forces herself to stay confident. She hypes herself up, remembering she's still a high-ranking noble and a total beauty. But when the doors open, she is greeted directly by Lucian, rocking a loose, unlaced casual shirt. Pernia's brain short-circuits. She expected a formal butler, not an absolute thirst trap. She mentally panics, admitting she has a massive weakness for handsome side characters, and this look is hitting way too hard. Misunderstanding her frozen stare, Lucian apologizes for not wearing a stuffy formal suit and offers to go change. Pernia laughs awkwardly, thinking to herself she just needs a second so she doesn't get a straight-up nosebleed. When he questions her weird reaction, she quickly coughs to cover it up. She blurts out that he looks perfectly fine, then speedwalks past him to hide her glowing red face. She trudges down the hall, cringing at how awkward she just sounded. As they head inside, she realizes the giant mansion is totally quiet because he sent all the staff away for their lesson. Regaining her focus, she turns to him to assess the damage, asking if he seriously can't dance at all. Lucian mentions that he at least knows how to do a formal bow. Pernia reassures him that the basic waltz is super simple unless he's trying to become a professional ballroom king. He nods, ready to learn. Step 1, face your partner. Even in her heels, Pernia still has to crane her neck to meet his gaze. She explains they need to lock eyes to start the dance. But the second they make eye contact, she gets completely lost in his ruby red eyes. She can't fathom how anyone could look at those gorgeous eyes and think he's cursed by a demon. Lucian starts sweating under her intense stare and awkwardly asks her to stop because he's feeling super uncomfortable. Pernia quickly snaps out of it, bossing him to endure it since eye contact is literally the golden rule of dancing. Moving on, she confirms he has the bow down. Now it's time for the hardest part for him, holding hands. Even through her thick gloves, she can immediately feel the rough, callous texture of a warrior's hands. Lucian gets totally flustered again, his brain clearly short-circuiting from the physical touch. Unfazed, Pernia promises to lead him through the steps, bragging that she's one of high society's absolute best dancers. And it's not a flex. The original Pernia might have been a massive brat, but she was classically trained to perfection. Unfortunately, her confidence completely shatters a second later. She says right foot, he moves left. He tries a basic turn and somehow drifts halfway across the room. Frustrated but determined, she barks at him to try again. Fast forward several days later, the music is still playing, but the two are just standing there in absolute defeat. Pernia looks completely dead inside, realizing the legendary hero literally has 2 left feet and 0 rhythm. Looking like a kicked puppy, Lucian apologizes, saying he's truly hopeless and suggests they just cancel the lessons entirely. But Pernia completely rejects his surrender. She declares that since she started this boot camp, she's the only one who gets to end it, and she has no plans of quitting. She internally rages, unable to comprehend how a guy with such an insane athletic physique dances like a broken wind-up doll. More importantly, she refuses to let her all-time favorite fictional character embarrass himself in front of the whole empire. She yells at him to get back on his feet right now. They run the drills again, fixing his posture and forcing him to stay close so he doesn't wildly spin away from her. Finally, he nails the move and Pernia lights up, cheering that he did amazing. Lucian smiles, asking if he actually looked like he was dancing this time. He innocently wonders if he at least looked somewhat decent earlier. Pernia bluntly roasts him, saying his earlier moves looked like he was performing a ritual to summon the Demon King. Lucian instantly turns super gloomy, making Pernia gasp at her own harshness. Trying to save the vibe, she loudly fakes being thirsty and drags him away for a tea break. Sitting down, she totally swoons, watching the fearsome war hero adorably sip on a glass of juice. She giggles, realizing how fun it is to discover these cute, hidden quirks about him that were never mentioned in the novel. Suddenly, Lucian gets serious and asks her a question. He genuinely wants to know why she's going out of her way to help him so much. Pernia casually rattles her teacup and hits him with the simplest answer, "Because you're my fiancé." She proudly states she won't let anyone talk trash behind their backs just because he lacks some dance skills. But as soon as the words leave her mouth, she panics, wondering if she sounded way too aggressive. She quickly jumps up, flailing her hands and clarifying that she isn't embarrassed by him at all. Lucian gives her a gentle smile, noting he knows she means well since she is his ally. Pernia freezes, realizing he deliberately used the exact word she had scribbled in her letter. She wonders if he actually liked being called that. Lucian admits that she is only the second person in his entire life to ever say they were on his side, making that letter incredibly special to him. Pernia immediately connects the dots, knowing the first person was Estelle the Saintess. It's an insanely famous backstory in the Empire. Estelle was touring the poorest regions when she found a young Lucian being treated like a feral animal. She rescued him, brought him to the capital, and taught him everything from basic speech to wielding a sword. Understanding his deep loyalty, Pernia smiles warmly at him. She tells him that if someone had saved her from a hellish nightmare like that, she would definitely be in love with them too, confessing her feelings every single day. Lucian looks downcast, muttering that if a cursed guy like him confessed, even the Saintess would run away screaming. Pernia shakes her head, insisting that's impossible unless the Saintess has absolutely terrible taste in men. Smiling warmly, she imagines exactly how Estelle would react. She confidently states that no woman would ever get upset by his genuine feelings. Suddenly, she totally fangirls out, loudly declaring that he's incredibly cool. Lucian just blinks at her, utterly confused by the praise. She laughs, explaining that he's been on the battlefield so long he missed out on the latest noble slang for someone deeply impressive. Leaning in, she reassures him once again that no girl would be mad at a confession from him. She begs him to stop being a coward and not run away from his own heart. Touched by her pep talk, Lucian smiles softly, starting to compliment her in return. But Pernia playfully cuts him off in her head, already knowing she's just being super nosy. The next day, Pernia shows up at his estate a little ahead of schedule. She's greeted by Paul, the sharp-looking, glasses-wearing butler. Since Lucian hates crowded spaces, he keeps his manor staff to a bare minimum. That leaves Paul practically running the entire massive estate by himself. In the original novel, Paul was a fiercely loyal servant, but there was one major problem for Pernia. He knew exactly how toxic the original Pernia used to be. He shoots her a freezing glare, clearly suspicious of her sudden daily visits. As they walk down the quiet hallway, Pernia decides to clear the air. She casually tells him that, believe it or not, she's genuinely just here to help Lucian out. Flashing a friendly wave, she insists they are on the same team, leaving the butler totally baffled. Paul turns back, demanding to know why she's suddenly acting like a saint. He clearly remembers the vicious trash talk she pulled 4 years ago. Back then, she publicly humiliated Lucian, calling him a demon-cursed commoner monster and throwing a massive fit about their engagement. Hearing her past self's absolute cringe dialogue, Pernia violently smacks her own forehead. Paul coldly tells her to drop the good intentions act and practically slams the door in her face. Standing alone, she pouts, thinking it's super unfair since she's literally Lucian's #1 fanboy now. Brushing off the awkwardness, she peeks around a changing screen to find her fiancé. Suddenly, she gasps, totally caught off guard. Lucian is passed out on the couch, looking absolutely exhausted. Staring at him, she realizes he must have been grinding those dance steps all night long. She knows he's pushing himself to the limit just to make a good impression on Estelle. Her heart aches a bit, wishing he'd just muster up the courage to be honest. To her, it doesn't matter if the Saintess rejects him right now. She just wants to save him from the agony of hiding his true feelings. When he finally stirs awake, she smiles and gently asks if he slept well. Still totally drowsy, he groggily nods. But then his brain boots up and he jolts upright in pure panic, asking how long she's been there. When she casually replies it's been an hour, he profusely apologizes for being such a terrible host. Pernia just waves it off with a grin, teasing that it gave her a chance to stare at something nice. Lucian tilts his head, completely oblivious to her flirting. Assuming he looks like a total mess, he frantically tries to excuse himself to wash up. But Pernia stops him, insisting he looks amazing as always. Reaching out, she gently points out that his bedhead is just a little messy. She starts running her fingers through his silver hair, telling him it's as soft as morning spider silk. Caressing his head, she admits she's honestly jealous of how smooth it is. Lucian chuckles, remarking that she always says the most unexpected things. As she fixes his strays, she asks if her weird compliments bother him, but he softly replies they don't. Finally, the highly anticipated day of the engagement party arrives. Inside the dressing room, the maids are absolutely losing their minds, hyping up her look. And for good reason, Pernia steps out in a breathtaking dark purple gown, looking like an absolute queen ready to steal the show. Pernia spins around, absolutely loving the fierce energy of her dark purple gown. She praises her maid Anne and rewards her hard work with some well-deserved paid time off. Anne instantly bursts into happy tears, swearing her eternal loyalty to her lady. The maid hypes her up, predicting that everyone, especially Lucian, will fall head over heels for her tonight. Pernia smiles at the sweet compliment, but internally she keeps her expectations grounded. After all, Lucian is down horrendous for the Saintess, so there's zero chance he's looking at her romantically. She reflects on how much effort she put into boosting his confidence before this massive event. During one of their sessions, he had nervously mentioned that his red eyes were seen as a demonic curse. She had literally yelled at him, passionately arguing that on a handsome guy, those eyes are just a massive charm point. Flustered, Lucian hesitated, humbly denying that he was actually that good-looking. Not taking no for an answer, she grabbed a mirror and forced him to stare at his own godly reflection for 5 seconds. Then she violently pointed at Paul the butler outside the window. She brutally roasted Paul, saying that compared to Lucian, the poor butler looked like a literal squid. She felt a tiny bit bad for catching Paul in the crossfire, but the strategy worked like a charm. Lucian finally stopped denying his own drip. Back in the present, she hopes that newfound confidence holds up tonight. A knock on the door interrupts her thoughts as Lucian asks if she's ready. She answers confidently, stepping out of the room. But the second she sees him, her jaw practically hits the floor. Lucian is standing there looking absolutely majestic in his formal night uniform and cape. She compliments his look, joking that her getting dolled up was totally pointless next to him. He immediately shakes his head, trying to smoothly compliment her back. Pernia expects him to call her beautiful or pretty. But instead, he proudly uses the slang she taught him earlier, loudly declaring that she looks cool. Later, as they make their grand entrance down the stairs, Lucian notices her shoulders shaking as she holds back laughter. She whispers that his attempt to use slang was just way too adorable. Looking around the packed ballroom, she's surprised to see Duke Esteban in attendance. She snickers, noticing the poor Duke looks completely drained while trapped in a conversation with her overly chatty dad. Dropping the jokes, she turns and gently calls out to Lucian. She seriously reminds him that this engagement was forced on him by the Emperor and her family without his consent. He flinches, but she quickly assures him that she's totally okay with it. Confused, he asks what she means by that. She drops a wild hypothetical. Even if some random woman showed up with a baby claiming it was his, she wouldn't make a scene. Basically, she's promising to be cool with absolutely anything he does. She's giving him a total free pass to follow his heart. She's doing all of this because she refuses to let his sense of duty stop him from confessing to Estelle. But instead of looking relieved, Lucian just frowns at her, clearly upset by the speech. Before they can talk it out, the announcer loudly declares the arrival of the crown prince. Pernia groans internally, absolutely dreading this guy's presence. She mentally screams, wondering why he even bothered to show up. In the novel, the prince is the main love interest, but he acts like a massive manchild who only realizes his feelings for the Saintess after pushing her away. Still, she has to admit he definitely oozes that arrogant main character aura. Prince Kalix struts in, rocking pitch black hair and looking like absolute royalty. He immediately walks up to Lucian, dropping the formal act and complaining that his dad forced him to attend. Lucian bows respectfully to the royal guest. Pernia watches the two massive love rivals stand face to face, feeling the heavy tension in the air. She gracefully steps in and gives a perfect curtsy to greet him. Calyx turns his attention to her, stating that he's heard a lot about her. Pernia flinches, totally confused. The male lead is only supposed to care about the saintess, so why is she on his radar? The crown prince drops a massive bomb, mentioning her secret letter to Estelle, fully exposing to Lucian that Pernia specifically requested the blessing dance for the two of them. Pernia pieces it together. Calyx is currently in his heavy denial phase, but he's still completely obsessed with Estelle. The crown prince is glaring absolute daggers at her simply because he's upset Calyx is scheduled to dance with Lucian later. Pernia feels his intense stare burning into the back of her head, completely weirded out by his petty attitude. But before things get worse, Lucian steps right up to the crown prince with a firm request. Without flinching, he directly demands the royals stop glaring at his fiancée like that. Pernia is absolutely shook, completely caught off guard that her fiancé is actually stepping up to defend her. In the original storyline, Lucian literally couldn't care less about Pernia, so this character development is wild. She mentally wipes away a tear, deciding those grueling 2 weeks of dance boot camp were 100% worth it. But Calyx immediately snaps back, angrily reminding Lucian of his place and calling him nothing more than the imperial family's loyal dog. The tension skyrockets and Pernia physically sweats, feeling like she's going to suffocate in the awkwardness. Suddenly, a sweet voice echoes through the hall, calling out their names. It's Estelle the Saintess, making her grand entrance looking absolutely breathtaking in a floral dress. The novel always described her as an ordinary girl with a warm heart, but Pernia knows that's the biggest lie ever told. Because in reality, the main character is a certified 10 out of 10. Estelle hurries down the stairs, realizing she interrupted a very tense standoff. She quickly apologizes, flustered that she forgot to properly greet the hostess first. She gracefully introduces herself, totally living up to her holy title. Pernia steps forward, warmly thanking the saintess for attending her party. Estelle flashes a dazzling smile, and Pernia internally screams over how cute she is. Estelle then turns to the crown prince, politely asking how he's been doing since they last met. Instead of acting normal, Calyx goes full tsundere and immediately roasts her curtsy for being awkward and common. Both Pernia and Lucian visibly cringe at the prince's ridiculous, childish behavior. Estelle just smiles it off, apologizing for her clumsiness before turning her attention away from him. She happily congratulates Lucian on his engagement, leaving Calyx totally panicked that his negging completely backfired. Pernia calmly thanks her, looking surprisingly composed. Pernia leans in to whisper, checking if he's holding up okay, and he flashes a gentle, reassuring smile. The party officially kicks off with Pernia's dad taking center stage to formally welcome the guests. But instead of keeping it short, the Marquis starts yapping about the 300-year history of the banquet hall. He starts listing off random dead architects, completely losing the crowd as people begin to murmur. He even starts rambling about the quality of the marble flooring. Calyx looks like he's ready to freeze the room, his face clearly screaming that he literally could not care less. Sensing the crowd dying, the Marquis awkwardly wraps up his speech, holding back comedic tears. As the music starts, Pernia knows exactly what the snobby nobles are whispering about. They're definitely mocking her for throwing away her aristocratic pride to marry someone from a common background. Some are probably even pitying her for being shackled to a man rumored to carry a demonic curse. But she brushes it all off, turning to Lucian and asking if he's nervous before reminding him of her flawless coaching. She confidently promises that if anyone dares laugh at his dancing, she'll personally chew them out. They step onto the floor and instantly the crowd is stunned. Everyone knew Pernia had moves, but Lucian is totally keeping up. The ladies in the crowd start swooning, completely mesmerized by his handsome face. Sure, 2 weeks wasn't enough to make him a professional ballroom king, but his insane visuals easily make up for any tiny slip-ups. As they reach the finale, Lucian smoothly warns her to be ready for the last stretch. With all eyes on them, Pernia decides it's time to absolutely flex on everyone. Even if she's just a supporting villainess in the novel's grand scheme, she refuses to let this moment slide. Lucian executes a flawless spin, and Pernia flashes a radiant smile, completely owning the spotlight. As the song ends, her dad loudly praises them, randomly bragging about a fortune teller who predicted Pernia would save the empire. It's incredibly ironic, considering the guy standing right next to her is the actual war hero who saved the nation. Flustered and annoyed, Pernia yells at her dad to stop spouting embarrassing nonsense. Turning her attention back to her fiancé, she proudly tells him he did a fantastic job. Lucian softly credits all his success to her coaching, and she smugly agrees. The crowd instantly swarms them, totally blown away by their chemistry and showering the couple with praise. Lucian softly whispers that they should get back to mingling with the crowd. Pernia agrees, cheerfully waving at her maid Anne in the distance. As the night goes on, the ballroom naturally splits into two main factions. One massive crowd swarms Lucian, completely starstruck by the war hero. The nobles pressure him to attend more high society banquets, though he awkwardly tries to excuse himself. While the snobby older aristocrats still look down on his commoner roots, the younger generation absolutely idolizes him. They bombard him with questions about soloing 100 enemies at once, and Pernia just sips her wine, feeling like a proud stage mom. Meanwhile, across the room, the vibe is entirely different. The second group is huddled around Crown Prince Calyx, kissing up to his royal status. But Pernia knows exactly what's really going on. The prince literally doesn't care about any of these people. He's just throwing a petty tantrum because Estelle is over there talking to other guys. He's practically boiling with jealousy, but since he's in total denial, he won't even admit it. Pernia glances back at Lucian, noticing he's deliberately refusing to even look in Estelle's direction. She sighs at how hard he's trying to suppress his feelings, thinking he's being a total idiot. Suddenly, the mood drops when a group of mean girls starts loudly trash-talking the saintess. They maliciously mock her simple dress, questioning how a commoner could even attend an engagement ceremony. They try to pull Pernia into their toxic gossip circle, but she instantly shuts them down. The girls keep yapping, bringing up a rumor that Estelle entered the crown prince's room without permission. They brutally label her as an ignorant, promiscuous peasant. Pernia starts profusely sweating, knowing these girls have absolutely lost their minds. Estelle herself might be too pure to snap. But the real danger is the two overpowered guys completely obsessed with her. If the childish male lad, or the literal flaming dragon side character hears this disrespect, it's going to be a bloodbath. Knowing she needs to prevent a massacre, Pernia jumps into action. Moving faster than someone buying concert tickets online, she violently rejects their narrative. She loudly declares that she thinks the saintess is actually amazing. She spins the rumor on its head, explaining that the prince was secretly ill and even the royal doctors missed it. She hypes Estelle up, praising her for bravely ignoring the guards just to save his life. Pernia throws her hands up, basically forming a one-woman fan club for the saintess. Internally, she thanks her dad for passing down his elite yapping genes. The mean girls are completely stunned into awkward silence, totally neutralized. Taking advantage of the quiet, Estelle steps up and sweetly agrees to the blessing dance Pernia requested. Pernia feels a wave of relief, knowing she's basically wearing plot armor as long as she's holding the main character's hand. Since she's a bit taller, Pernia smoothly takes the lead. As they start moving, Pernia admires how ridiculously cute Estelle is. She shoots a smug glare back at the villainous gang, wondering how anyone could hate a literal angel. While they glide across the floor, Pernia gently checks in on the saintess. Estelle forces a smile, claiming she's totally fine since she's heard those insults a million times before. Pernia knows the heroine's tragic lore, how she's constantly misunderstood and framed just for being a commoner. And yet she always just endures the abuse with a pure smile. But Pernia drops some real talk, telling her that hearing harsh words every day never stops them from stinging. You just get better at swallowing the pain, which is completely toxic. She looks the saintess dead in the eyes and tells her to stop being so patient. Instead, she whispers that she should just absolutely wreck anyone who bothers her. Deja's face lights up in a huge, genuine beam, saying Vu is the very first person to ever give her that advice. Pernia blinks, feeling a weird wave of deja vu at that exact phrase. But as the music fades, Pernia snaps back to her master plan and tightly grabs Estelle's hand. Startled, Estelle realizes she isn't done yet. Pernia wildly flags down Lucian, loudly declaring that her fiancé needs to step up and receive his blessing dance too. Realizing her job is done, Pernia flashes a cheerful smile and literally dashes out of the room. As she runs away, she genuinely wonders if this is how a dad feels walking his daughter down the aisle. She smiles to herself, totally convinced that Lucien and Estelle are basically endgame. But her inner peace shatters instantly when she spots something completely out of place. It's Calyx standing right next to the two of them. Estelle turns around, totally surprised to see the crown prince right behind her. Calyx looks absolutely furious, demanding to know why Lucien is touching his girl. Lucien stands his ground, staring the royal straight in the eyes, and calmly tells him to let go of the saintess's hand. Calyx completely loses it, roaring Lucien's name in pure rage. Hiding in the background, Pernia grabs her head in absolute panic, kicking herself for forgetting how unhinged the jealous male lead could get. Before a royal fight breaks out, Estelle gently tells Lucien she's okay and asks him to let go. Both men flinch as she gracefully steps between them to de-escalate the situation. Smiling softly, she politely asks the two powerhouse men to just chill out. Watching from the shadows, Pernia starts sweating, seriously doubting if Lucien will actually listen to the prince. And to her absolute shock, he doesn't. Lucien just stands there refusing to budge. Pernia's mind races, knowing that if Lucien disobeys a direct royal order right now, his whole life will be completely ruined. Desperate to fix it, she wonders if she should jump in and play the desperate fiancé card to save him. But Estelle steps up first, giving Lucien a pleading look that he simply can't ignore. Reluctantly, Lucien releases her hand as the crown prince quickly escorts the saintess away from the party. Pernia finally rushes in, trying to chase after them, claiming she has an urgent message for Estelle. But she's immediately blocked by two dead-eyed royal knights enforcing the prince's strict orders. Going full method actor, Pernia starts throwing an absolute fit, screaming that she's the most vicious villainess in the empire and demanding they move. But they just ignore her, leaving Pernia kneeling on the floor, absolutely devastated by the unfairness of it all. She thinks about how hard Lucien practiced, fighting his own two left feet, sacrificing sleep and stressing his perfect skin just for this one moment. She sighs, knowing he wasn't even going to confess tonight. He literally just wanted a single, simple dance. Suddenly, a soft voice calls her name. She looks up to find Lucien standing right behind her. Pernia's brain scrambles, completely unsure of how to explain why she's sitting on the floor looking like a dramatic mess. But Lucien just gives her a gentle, knowing smile and asks if she already knew how he felt about the saintess. He casually adds that he's not exactly subtle, so it makes sense that someone as sharp as her figured it out. While he's talking, he gently reaches down and takes her hand. Lifting her up, his expression suddenly changes to something completely unexpected. Pernia's heart skips a beat, totally confused by the soft, adoring look in his red eyes. In that split second, the master matchmaker realizes she totally miscalculated the situation. Lucien leans in, softly admitting that he actually wants to learn more about her. As the sun sets, he asks his supposed fake fiancée if she'll give him a real chance. Fast forward, Pernia is back in her room when her maid Anne happily announces her return from vacation. Pernia greets her, looking completely pale and exhausted, like she hasn't slept in days. Concerned, Anne rushes over, asking if something terrible happened while she was away. Pernia waves it off, mumbling some meta nonsense about being a supporting character who doesn't have the infinite energy of a female lead. Realizing she's rambling like a crazy person, she awkwardly laughs and blames the sleep deprivation. Trying to change the subject, she asks Anne to brush her hair. As Anne brushes, she loudly scolds the other maids for clearly neglecting her lady's care. Pernia closes her eyes, telling Anne not to blame the staff. Because the real reason she's an absolute wreck right now is entirely Lucien's fault. Ever since his unexpected confession, his words have been echoing in her head on an endless loop. She spent days analyzing it, trying to figure out if it was some weird 4D chess move or just a prank. She admits she's definitely a catch, but the math isn't mathing. Lucien is fundamentally hardwired to only love Estelle. She knows damn well a decade-long obsession doesn't just evaporate overnight. Still totally lost, she turns to her maid for some desperate relationship advice. Using the classic asking for a friend trick, Pernia prepares to drop all the juicy details to get Anne's honest opinion. Pernia almost exposes herself by saying she has a friend, completely forgetting she's a notorious villainess with zero squad. She quickly covers her tracks, telling her maid Anne that she's just asking for an acquaintance. She sets up the hypothetical: a guy has a massive secret crush on a woman but hides his feelings completely. However, the man knows that another woman has figured out his secret. She asks Anne how the guy would react to being exposed. Flashing back to Lucian's intense stare, she remembers him saying he wanted to learn more about her. She asks her maid what a guy could possibly mean by dropping a line like that. Anne just sighs and bluntly suggests the guy is probably just a massive player. Pernia literally leaps out of her chair, fiercely defending her favorite side character. She insists she doesn't know about other men, but Lucian would never stoop to being a womanizer. Anne taps her chin, putting her detective hat on to analyze the lore. She confirms that no one else was supposed to know about this secret crush, right? Pernia nods, hanging onto her maid's every word. Anne drops a terrifying theory. The guy is definitely threatening the woman. He's just keeping her close to monitor her, and if she snitches, he'll absolutely unalive her. Pernia's jaw drops as the twisted logic hits her. She tightly grasps Anne's hands, totally convinced her maid is an absolute genius. In her mind, Anne's dark theory makes terrifyingly perfect sense. Her brain flashes back to the original novel, remembering a greedy nobleman who tried to use Lucian's secret crush against him. When that guy tried to blackmail him, Lucian brutally wiped him off the map. He was dangerously desperate to keep his feelings for Estelle hidden from the world. Pernia wails on the floor in pure despair, calling herself a total idiot. She realizes her whole motivational speech earlier probably sounded like a straight-up death threat to the war hero. Imagining his cold, calculating stare as she spoke, she feels a chill down her spine. Her maid tries to comfort her, but Pernia is already breaking down. She realizes she practically speedrun her own doom. Terrified of triggering her murder ending, she goes into full lockdown, deciding to fake an illness and hide in her room. But her master plan completely backfires when a sudden knock echoes through the door. Her dad cheerfully announces that Lucian is here, making Pernia growl in absolute frustration. It turns out the family doctor snitched that she was faking her sickness, so her dad invited the knight right in. Through the door, Lucian gently asks if she's doing all right. Pernia clutches her chest, wondering why her heart is doing backflips for a guy who might literally assassinate her. When he asks to come inside for a moment, she instantly panics and yells no. But a second later, she cringes, worrying she sounded way too arrogant. She scrambles for an excuse, claiming she looks like a total mess right now and telling him to go away. Smooth as ever, Lucian counters that he'll just come inside with his eyes completely closed. Pernia is completely stunned by the bizarre suggestion, but then Lucian softly asks again, his voice dropping. She starts sweating, wondering why this legendary warrior sounds so genuinely sad. Imagining him waiting outside the door like a sad, abandoned puppy, her defenses totally crumble. Groaning in defeat, she finally tells him to come in. The door creaks open and Pernia braces herself for the worst. But as he steps into the room, she is completely caught off guard. Instead of a hitman, in walks Lucian, hiding behind a massive, beautiful bouquet of purple hydrangeas. She notes that he technically kept his promise to keep his eyes covered. He raises the flowers, sweetly saying he brought a gift because he heard she was unwell. Pernia feels a heavy wave of guilt, holding the giant bouquet while knowing she's totally faking it. But Lucian steps closer, saying he was genuinely worried. As the flowers lower, Pernia sees he is wearing a literal blindfold. Shocked, she asks if he seriously can't see her right now, and he nods. He totally flexes, explaining that his elite knight instincts let him move flawlessly even in pitch darkness. Staring at him, Pernia realizes she can't dodge this situation forever. She grips the flowers, deciding to take this blindfolded opportunity to face her fears. She steels her nerves, determined to apologize for crossing the line and meddling in his personal affairs. Pernia hesitates, bracing herself to promise that she'll never cross the line again. She prepares to say she shouldn't have been so nosy. But as she gently caresses his cheek, her heart overrides her brain. Looking him dead in the eye, she completely changes her tune, telling him she actually does want to learn more about him. She internally scolds herself for being selfish and not considering how a confession from a villainess might make him feel. Lucian clenches his fist, instantly apologizing. He realizes any normal woman would be upset by a guy demanding to know more about her. But Pernia quickly interrupts, practically yelling that his line wasn't upsetting, it was undeniably cool. Still totally flustered behind his blindfold, Lucian looks absolutely bewildered by her sudden hype. Peeking from behind the giant bouquet, Pernia drops a universal truth. No woman in history has ever disliked a genuinely handsome man. She admits that hearing a guy that attractive say he wants to know her better definitely made her heart race. Lucian tilts his head, softly asking why she's been avoiding him if that's the case. Pernia flinches, caught completely off guard. To cover her panic, she explains she was just shocked because they're already engaged. Why would they need to learn more about each other now? But she quickly admits there is one major reason. They were basically forced together by the emperor and her father without any real choice. Stepping closer, she confesses she doesn't want their relationship to just be a cold, formal arrangement. She genuinely wants a more honest, real connection with him. To do that, she needs to know the real Lucian. Lucian stands there quietly, and Pernia mentally curses herself, realizing this whole romantic speech wasn't exactly what she had planned. She pushes forward anyway, dropping a reality check. She warns him that if they actually get to know each other, they might find things they despise. If that happens, it could completely ruin the engagement. She asks if he's actually willing to take that massive risk. Without a second of hesitation, Lucian softly replies, "Of course." Pernia gasps, her mind racing. If things actually work out between them, she might just survive her doomed villainous ending. Holding the massive bouquet, she stares up at him, the tension entirely shifting. With a warm smile, Lucian formally asks for her permission to officially start learning more about her. And Pernia gladly accepts. The very next day, they jump right into getting to know each other. Lucian starts simple, asking about her likes and dislikes. Over a fancy slice of strawberry cake, she cheerfully lists off her love for anything pretty and sparkly. When asked what she dislikes, she hilariously throws shade at toxic male leads who are mean to supporting characters. Lucian dutifully jots down notes, though he looks totally confused by her meta rant. She laughs it off, telling him to ignore her gibberish. But Lucian actually writes, likes to talk gibberish down on his notepad, taking his new mission incredibly seriously. Later, over tea, Lucian questions if a simple Q&A interview is really the best way to get to know someone. Pernia totally agrees, saying they need to actually do stuff together instead of just talking. When he asks what she has in mind, she points her fork and suggests they dive into her favorite hobby. Cut to a high-end boutique, where Pernia has completely taken over as Lucian's personal stylist. She watches eagerly as he steps out in a sharp new outfit, blushing slightly as he asks if she genuinely enjoys doing this. Pernia completely fangirls, admitting she absolutely loves playing dress-up with him. She then hands him a popular, simple gentleman's suit, ignoring his confusion since it isn't sparkly like she mentioned earlier. But when he steps out in the sleek black suit looking incredibly shy, Pernia almost loses it. He looks way too good. She compliments how the dark charm perfectly contrasts his porcelain skin. Next up is a riding outfit. She notes that a riding outfit only works on someone lean, throwing massive shade at her dad's muffin top from back in the day. But on Lucian, his flat stomach makes the fit look flawless. Seeing him look this good, Pernia makes an executive decision. She loudly declares to the shop owner that she is buying absolutely everything he tried on today. Lucian panics, asking if she's really doing this just for him. She confidently confirms, saying her family might be struggling, but she's saved up her allowance for months just for a shopping spree like this. Lucian respectfully tries to decline, feeling it's way too generous of a gift for no specific reason. Lucian looks at her intently, considering her words. Popping a snack in her mouth, Pernia casually asks him for one more favor. He listens closely as she makes her request. She hesitates for a second before telling him what she wants. Tapping her shoes, she asks him to do something specific the next time he visits. She turns around and asks him to wear the outfit she just bought him, saying she wants to see him in it again. But internally, she's absolutely down bad, hiding her face because she actually wants to say she can't wait to take it off him. Lucian just smiles and asks why she looks so happy. She quickly brushes it off, changing the subject to an upcoming banquet. Lucian asks if her family's carriage will be fixed by then. Remembering the busted old carriage sitting in her courtyard, she admits it won't be. She explains she's just going to rent a cheap one for the day. Without missing a beat, Lucian smoothly offers to personally escort her to the party himself. Pernia happily agrees, calling it a fair trade for the clothes she bought him. Fast forward to the day of the banquet, Anne finishes helping Pernia get dressed. The maid sighs, pointing out that her lady's dress and jewelry are totally out of fashion. Pernia practically waves it off, saying their family is broke and it's just a low-key tea party with some noble ladies anyway. But secretly, she's sweating because the real truth is she blew her entire allowance spoiling Lucian. She rushes Anne, not wanting to make her handsome fiancé wait, and just gushes over how much Lucian must treasure her. Pernia insists he's just being polite, but Anne is totally convinced it's true love. Joking about her own cluelessness, Pernia heads downstairs. But as she gets closer to the parlor, she gets a seriously bad feeling. She grabs the door handle, praying her instincts are wrong. She bursts in to find her dad absolutely yapping to Lucian about the beauty of youth. Pernia physically recoils, completely mortified by her father's corny rambling. She frantically asks why he's even here, and her dad casually explains he finished his errands early and decided to keep Lucian company. He claims Lucian looked bored, but Pernia spots her fiancé's dead-eyed stare and mentally asks if he's okay. She quickly apologizes for taking so long, while her dad glares at her for being late. Trying to lighten the mood, she snaps her fan open and confidently jokes that her beauty is worth the wait. Lucian doesn't even blink, smoothly asking where she learned to answer so seductively. Pernia instantly short-circuits. She quickly grabs him and drags him out the door, while her dad dramatically cries in the background about young romance. Outside, Pernia is greeted by an absolute tank of a luxury carriage, a personal reward from the emperor himself. Spotting Lucian's crest of a lily and sword, he acts the perfect gentleman and escorts her inside. Pernia sinks into the plush seats, practically melting as she declares it's great to be rich. Lucian asks if she's comfortable, and she jokes she could ride in this thing every single day. He gives a soft smile, assuring her they'll arrive soon. Pernia watches him pull out a notepad and internally panics, wondering if he's actually writing down her unhinged ramblings. Then she notices something missing. She pouts, asking why he isn't wearing the clothes she bought him and if he didn't like them. Lucian quickly denies it, explaining he has to go straight to the training grounds to run drills with his men after dropping her off. He blushes softly, admitting he didn't want the outfit to get ruined because her gift is incredibly precious to him. Pernia is completely touched by how sweet he is, though she insists they're just clothes. As the carriage pulls up to the venue, she tells him she's looking forward to seeing him wear them next time. Stepping out, she thanks him for the ride, relieved she didn't have to roll up in a dusty rental carriage. She waves goodbye, happily thinking this is exactly why people love luxury cars. Before she can leave, Lucian gently reaches out. He carefully fixes a crooked hairpin in her hair, his fingers lightly brushing her. Pernia freezes, her heart absolutely pounding out of her chest from the tiny gesture. Unfazed, Lucian tells her to have a wonderful time and promises to pick her up later. Still recovering from the sheer riz, Pernia walks into the banquet completely dazed. Suddenly, a pink-haired noble lady spots her and calls out her name. The pink-haired noble aggressively steps to Pernia, confronting her about practically worshipping the commoner saintess earlier. Pernia immediately recognizes them. It's the exact same mean girl clique from her engagement party. Totally unfazed, Pernia casually replies that the saintess is just the absolute best. She slumps slightly, remembering how toxic the original Pernia used to be with this group. The pink-haired girl smirks, claiming she finally figured out why Pernia suddenly switched sides. Looking Pernia up and down, she points out her out-of-fashion dress. She loudly declares that House Lilac must be completely broke, suggesting Pernia is only kissing up to Estelle for a charity handout. Taking it a step further, she mocks the saintess, saying her illness of helping the poor makes Pernia the perfect pathetic charity case. The clique absolutely howls with laughter at the cruel joke. Pernia physically twitches, her blood boiling at their sheer audacity. She debates whether she should just absolutely wreck them right here and now. But she quickly checks herself, telling herself to stay patient and avoid causing a massive scene. She sighs, figuring it's not totally their fault they're acting like this. The author literally wrote them to be basic, one-dimensional bullies. The old Pernia would have marched to the center table and started a vicious brawl, but the new Pernia just wants peace. She thinks it's ridiculous to fight when they are all technically doomed side characters who could be murdered by Lucian at any moment. Hoping to diffuse the tension, she quietly takes a sip of tea, praying they'll eventually just leave her alone. But the blue-haired girl won't drop it, loudly gossiping about how she saw Pernia arrive in Lucian's luxury carriage. She mocks the hypocrisy, noting how quickly Pernia stopped treating him like a demon-cursed orphan. The brunette chimes in, insisting Pernia is only playing nice now because she desperately needs the war hero's massive bank account. The pink-haired leader laughs, calling poverty a terrifying thing, but adding that Pernia's fake affection is even scarier. They start questioning if Lucian will even give her a single coin, noting that he donates all his money to Estelle's charity. Pernia aggressively stabs a strawberry, furiously trying to block out their relentless yapping. Then the conversation takes a wild turn as they accuse the saintess of deliberately seducing men. The pink-haired girl brings up the engagement party, pointing out how the crown prince dragged Estelle away, and how even the cold-hearted Lucian seemed completely mesmerized by her. They start whispering about how the emperor favors her, and how even their own brothers are totally obsessed. Pernia rolls her eyes, mentally pointing out that Estelle is literally the main character. Of course, the author made everyone fall in love with her. But when the pink-haired girl officially crosses the line, slamming her hand on the table to call Estelle a calculating seductress, Pernia finally snaps. She slowly sets her teacup down, the silence instantly grabbing their attention. Without raising her voice, she looks the leader dead in the eyes and bluntly tells her to shut up because she's ruining her appetite. The pink-haired girl glares, warning Pernia that she has no allies here, but Pernia just smirks, knowing exactly what card to play. She drops a casual threat, loudly mentioning a rumor about the pink-haired girl's upcoming engagement to Marquis Garcia. The girl instantly freezes, realizing where this is going. Pernia taps her chin, wondering out loud who would be more destroyed if rumors spread that they got into a physical fistfight today. Would it be the already ruined villainess, or the girl desperately trying to secure a high society marriage? The leader flinches hard, completely checkmated. Standing up, Pernia coldly advises her that before starting trouble, she should probably consider who she's actually messing with. Being smart is a necessary noble virtue after all. As the party wraps up, Lucian returns to pick her up. He notices her quiet mood and asks if something happened. He points out that the mean girl clique looked completely traumatized as they rushed out, like they had just faced a literal monster on the battlefield. Pernia smoothly lies, saying their makeup was just cakey and the proper etiquette is to pretend not to notice. Lucian, totally clueless about girl drama, nods in agreement. He gently helps her back into the royal carriage, completely unaware of the absolute verbal massacre that just occurred. Once inside, Pernia feels an intense stare and catches Lucian nervously glancing at her. She groans internally, realizing this carriage ride is about to get incredibly awkward. Lucian clears his throat and brings up the massive imperial banquet happening next month for the crown prince's birthday. Pernia's stomach drops. In the original novel, that exact birthday feast is a massive turning point in the plot. It's the scene where the saintess is publicly humiliated by the high society nobles. Several mean ladies, including the original Pernia, brutally insult Estelle for wearing a basic, shabby dress to the grand event. In the book, the crown prince eventually shows up to save the day like a classic male lad. But Lucian completely skips the feast, too terrified of his own feelings to even be in the same room as her, cementing his status as a useless side character. Lucian notices her intense glare and nervously asks if he did something wrong. Pernia mentally roasts him, thinking he hasn't messed up yet, but he's destined to. She sighs heavily, refusing to let the plot play out like that. If a noble lady is going to cause trouble, then another noble lady has to step up and fix it. She officially locks in her next master plan. Wanting to fix their relationship, Pernia looks at Lucian and says that even though they haven't known each other long, they've built a solid foundation of trust. She notices him slightly clench his fist before he nods in agreement. With a serious expression, she slams her hands down and formally makes a request. Staring him dead in the eyes, she asks if he will let her borrow some money. Internally, she smirks, sticking to her plan. A noble lady's mess must be cleaned up by another noble lady. Earlier, she used the exact same line about their trusting relationship to butter him up. And just like before, he clenched his fist in anticipation. But when she boldly slammed her arms out and dropped the absolute bombshell asking for cash, Lucian was totally stunned. She anxiously grips her dress, wondering what she'll do if he rejects her. If worst comes to worst, she plans to raid her dad's secret stash hidden inside a children's book. But without missing a beat, Lucian casually agrees, asking how much she needs so he can get it ready. Pernia's eyes go wide in shock. Mentally, she quickly crunches the numbers. Estelle needs a brand new dress, high-end accessories, and matching shoes, though Pernia plans to do the makeup herself to save cash. Suddenly, she snaps out of her budgeting phase and forcefully pushes Lucian back onto the couch. Realizing she just basically tackled him, she frantically apologizes, swearing she wasn't trying to forcefully mug him. Amused, Lucian asks if this intense method is how she usually borrows money. She quickly denies it, admitting this is literally her first time asking for a loan. Sitting back down, he gently tells her that if she ever needs emergency funds, she can always rely on him. But his eyes darken as he issues a strict warning: she must never, ever borrow money from another person like this. True to his word, he drops a massive, heavy bag of 500 gold coins into her hands. Surprised, she asks if he's even going to question why she needs such a huge sum. Lucian smoothly guesses that she's planning to buy pretty clothes for a pretty person. When she asks how he knew, he reminds her that she literally told him that's her favorite hobby. She smiles, genuinely touched that he remembered. But as she turns to leave, she catches him slumping in his chair, looking slightly bummed out. She quickly grabs the bag, worried he might change his mind. Outside, she happily realizes 500 gold is more than enough to dress Estelle up and totally crush those mean girls' egos. But a new problem arises. How is she going to convince the pure, humble saintess to accept an insanely expensive luxury dress? Since she's officially just a supporting villainess with zero connection to the heroine, she knows Estelle will likely reject the gift. She racks her brain, trying to figure out a master plan to convince her. The very next morning, Anne nervously asks if Pernia is really going out alone. Pernia nods confidently. The maid strongly suggests calling Lucian as an escort, noting that the war hero has been following her around lately like a lost duckling. Pernia immediately shoots the idea down. When Anne asks why, Pernia mentally groans, knowing she can't exactly reveal she's on a secret mission to meet his unrequited love, Estelle. She imagines her dad's dramatic reaction, knowing if he finds out, the entire capital city will be gossiping about it by noon. She reassures Anne that her destination isn't dangerous and tells her not to worry. Anne reluctantly agrees, nervously telling her lady to stay safe. But arriving at her destination, Pernia pulls her hood up, looking around in absolute shock. She knew the slums were bad, but seeing the sheer poverty and desperation in person leaves her stunned. She passes by sick, exhausted people who look like absolute walking corpses. Standing outside the rundown charity clinic Estelle created, Pernia takes a deep breath. She walks in and is immediately greeted by a tired-looking nurse asking why she's there. Suddenly, Estelle pops out from the back, her face lighting up as she recognizes Lady Pernia. Estelle gasps, worriedly asking if Pernia came all the way to the slums because she's sick. Pernia loudly denies it, aggressively claiming she's perfectly healthy and even ate an entire cake by herself that morning. Confused, Estelle asks why she visited. Throwing on her best innocent face, Pernia boldly claims she came to devote herself to the poor and officially become a volunteer. Estelle is absolutely stunned, asking if she really wants to do manual labor instead of just writing a donation check. Pernia delivers an Oscar-worthy performance, claiming that helping with her own two hands is far more meaningful. But internally, she chuckles like a cartoon villain, admitting she's totally lying and plans to quit the second she successfully convinces Estelle to take the dress. Estelle smiles brightly, completely buying the act and praising Pernia as an incredibly impressive woman. Pernia winces as an imaginary arrow of guilt strikes her right in the heart. She silently hypes herself up, determined to execute her sneaky master plan of working directly by Estelle's side. She figured that putting in some elbow grease was the fastest way to gain the heroine's favor. Once they actually became friends, handing over the fancy dress would be a total breeze. But unfortunately, she heavily underestimated the actual workload. Disguised as Nia, she sprints across the clinic as a patient suddenly vomits blood all over the bedding. Before she can even breathe, another nurse yells for her to stop a different patient from completely wrecking the washroom. Pernia is immediately ordered to help Mr. Russell use the bathroom. She forces a bright, strained smile while internally screaming about what she just signed up for. Another nurse barks at her to hurry up, leaving Pernia seriously debating if she should just quit on day one. She glances around the clinic, trying to refocus. She reminds herself that honestly, it doesn't really matter what Estelle wears to the banquet. But she refuses to just give up just because things got a little difficult. Groaning, she forces herself to push through the exhaustion and changes a patient's bed sheets. When the nurses call her name again, she eagerly responds, forcing herself to keep moving. Estelle checks in on her, noting that the work is incredibly tough. Pernia sighs, admitting it really is. Estelle looks down at her own hands, softly wishing she had enough divine power to just heal everyone in the clinic at once. Pernia stares at her, genuinely blown away. She wonders if Estelle is this selfless because she's a saintess, or simply because she has that pure female lead energy. Noticing the intense stare, Estelle asks if Pernia has something to say. Before she can answer, a terrifying scream echoes through the clinic. Pernia immediately groans, knowing she's going to have to deal with whatever fresh nightmare just arrived. Estelle sighs, acknowledging again how hard the work is, and Pernia just tiredly agrees. Estelle repeats her wish to heal everyone instantly. Pernia stares again, completely mesmerized by her pure dedication to helping these people. She honestly can't fathom how anyone could be this endlessly devoted to strangers. When Estelle asks if she needs something, that same horrifying scream interrupts them again. A man is brought in heavily bleeding from his legs. Estelle immediately takes charge, ordering the staff to move him to a bed. The injured man grabs her arm, desperately asking if she really is the saintess. Estelle calmly confirms it. The man begs her to use her divine powers, crying that if she doesn't, he'll permanently lose both of his legs. Estelle looks down in sorrow, explaining she currently doesn't have enough divine power left, but promises the priests will do their absolute best to treat him normally. The man completely loses his mind. He screams in her face, demanding she fix him immediately because his family will starve if he can't work. Pernia watches the chaos unfold. She understands the guy is terrified, but this feels incredibly wrong. Unable to hold back, Pernia stands up and bluntly asks if the saintess somehow owes him money. Both Estelle and the bleeding man look at her in total confusion. Pernia steps closer, her voice turning ice cold as she tells the man he is completely mistaken. The saintess has zero obligation to magically fix his ruined legs. She stands tall beside Estelle, firmly stating that the saintess is just a volunteer here. She glares at the man, reminding him that Estelle doesn't have to do any of this. She's choosing to help out of the goodness of her heart. Staring down at the stunned patient, Pernia delivers an absolute reality check. If he can't obediently accept her kind help, then he should just leave. The entire clinic goes completely silent, the other nurses murmuring in shock at her bold statement. Pernia turns to the staff, asking why they're just standing around. She orders them to let the man go since he's clearly refusing their normal treatment. The injured man finally panics. He desperately yells that he wants the regular treatment and promises to wait patiently. Pernia smirks, praising him for finally making the smart choice, noting he's obviously the one with the most to lose here. The man trembles on the bed, staring at her like she's absolutely unhinged. Later, outside the operating room, Pernia slumps onto a bench, rubbing her arms and letting out a massive sigh of relief. Estelle walks out looking exhausted. Pernia asks how the surgery went, and Estelle explains they saved one leg but unfortunately had to amputate the other. Seeing the saintess look so defeated, Pernia softly tells her she did her absolute best. She flashes a warm smile, begging Estelle not to make such a sad face because she genuinely did a great job. Estelle sincerely thanks her, and Pernia casually asks what she's thanking her for. Estelle explains that Pernia's words, both right now and when she stood up to the angry patient earlier, made her feel so much better. Pernia internally cheers, realizing her bold defense actually worked perfectly. She had been secretly terrified Estelle would be disappointed in her for acting so harshly toward an injured man. Getting serious, Pernia reminds Estelle that she constantly forces herself to endure way too much abuse. She points out that while being considerate is nice, pushing herself to the breaking point will only destroy her emotionally. She firmly tells Estelle she shouldn't tolerate demanding jerks just because she holds a holy title. Pernia advises her to kick unreasonable people to the curb, regardless of whether they are a patient, a noble, or a priest. Estelle takes a breath, her smile returning as she cheerfully agrees. Estelle fidgets with her hands, nervously pointing out that this is literally only their second time meeting each other. Looking up with determination, Estelle boldly asks if they can officially become friends. Pernia's eyes widen in shock. Estelle blushes, admitting she wants to be friends too, realizing she completely fumbled her own confession. She officially asks if they can start their friendship today. Pernia absolutely beams, happily agreeing. Her master plan to infiltrate the heroine's inner circle was a massive success. 1 week later. Back in the clinic, an elderly patient with dementia begs Nia to sing a song. A little kid excitedly joins in, begging for a performance. Pernia stands there totally deadpan. She mentally reminds herself to hate the disease, not the patient. Fighting back tears of embarrassment, she starts awkwardly singing and doing a little dinosaur dance to entertain them. Pernia poses dramatically, hyping up the novel's main characters in her head like a total fangirl. She claps her hands together, practically buzzing with excitement. It's been a whole week since she started volunteering, and she's feeling pretty good about her progress. As the sun sets, she decides it's the perfect time to bring up the upcoming royal banquet. Estelle walks into the room with a fresh basket of bread, calling out to her. She offers Pernia some food, noticing she hasn't taken a break to eat all day. Mid-chew, Pernia casually asks if Estelle is still going to the Crown Prince's birthday party. Estelle admits she's just gonna rewear her old dress from the engagement party, claiming anything too flashy is unseemly for a saintess. Pernia's eye twitches, internally groaning because she totally saw this humble brag coming. Estelle innocently breaks off a piece of bread. She munches on it, completely oblivious to Pernia's master planning. Playing the long game, Pernia hits her with the puppy dog eyes, sadly saying they won't be able to wear matching outfits. She keeps up the sad act, looking absolutely heartbroken. Estelle pauses, completely thrown off by the idea of matching friendship dresses. Pernia smoothly explains that it's a massive trend among noble besties right now. She sighs softly, claiming she really wanted to try it out with her. Estelle instantly looks guilty, while Pernia waves her hands, telling her not to feel pressured. But deep down, Pernia is grinning like an evil genius, silently begging her to take the bait. Estelle totally falls for it, nervously tapping her chin. She smiles and agrees, admitting her current dress is pretty worn out anyway. Pernia literally tosses her bread aside, jumping up to grab Estelle's hands in pure victory. She practically sparkles, hyped that her mastermind dress-up plan worked flawlessly. Cut to later, Pernia is stepping out looking like an absolute queen in a frilly yellow and green gown. Her maid asks if she's heading back to the garden, but Pernia says she has other plans. The maid breathes a massive sigh of relief, admitting she used to stress out every time Pernia went there. Pernia thinks back on her week of volunteering, noting she doesn't really need to go anymore now that she's befriended Estelle. But then she pictures Estelle's radiant, welcoming smile. And she admits she's absolutely gonna keep visiting whenever she gets the chance. Because once you get hit with that Estelle charm, you get completely addicted. The maid just stares, totally confused by her obsession. Then the maid casually asks if she's talked to Sir Lucian lately. She points out that the guy is basically down bad, spamming her with letters every other day. Pernia stares at one of the letters, breaking out in a cold sweat. She panics, knowing if Lucian finds out she's secretly meeting Estelle, it's totally game over. She quickly makes up a lie, claiming she's been locked in her room reading a massive novel so he won't get mad. She zooms off down the stairs before the maid can ask any more questions. But the universe has other plans, as a smooth voice mentions her sudden love for reading. Pernia freezes, looking right into the handsome, silver-haired face of Sir Lucian himself. She hypes herself up internally, reminding herself he won't literally end her just for dodging him a few times. She keeps her cool, asking why he randomly pulled up unannounced. Leaning in, she whispers, asking if he came all this way because he thought she'd run off with his money. Lucian looks at her like she has two heads, completely baffled by the question. Pernia sweats, promising she's gonna pay him back with interest but desperately needs the cash right now to buy Estelle jewelry. She stares at him, genuinely confused about why else he'd be tracking her down. The tension builds as she waits for his answer. Suddenly, a servant bursts through the doors, shouting about a rare tea they saved just for Lucian. Pernia instantly assumes he came for a business meeting with her dad. She jokes that talking to her father will tire him out in no time. But Lucian locks eyes with her and drops a bomb, stating he isn't here for his money or to hang out with the Marquis. Pernia stares back, wide-eyed and totally clueless as to what he actually wants. Lucian stares right into her eyes and smoothly drops a total bomb, saying he came here simply because he wanted to see her. Pernia's brain basically short-circuits. She stammers that it's only been a week since they last met, but he immediately counters, saying it feels like it's already been a week. Her inner fangirl is absolutely screaming with happiness. She desperately wishes she could just cancel all her plans and hang out with him. But she bites the bullet and tells him she has somewhere important to be today. When he asks what she's up to, she casually mentions she's meeting a friend to go shopping. Lucian looks totally confused and blurts out that he heard she literally has 0 friends. Emotional damage. Pernia thinks to herself that normally, a comment like that would have totally wrecked her. But things are different now. She happily recalls how she recently made a new bestie that she shares everything with. Hearing this, Lucian mutters the words "a shared journal," sounding completely suspicious. His whole vibe shifts as he looms over her with a dark aura, asking her to introduce him to this mysterious friend. Pernia completely panics, realizing her secret is inches away from being exposed. Her mind races, remembering how lonely she used to be before all of this. She thinks back to her sweet, bread-sharing moments with Estelle. Meanwhile, Lucien is still hyperfixated on the whole shared journal detail, refusing to let it go. He steps even closer, basically trapping her with his intense, unyielding stare. Pernia is sweating bullets, completely out of excuses. Suddenly, her dad pops out on the balcony, shouting for Lucien to come inside. Perfect timing. Seizing the ultimate distraction, Pernia tells her dad it's a beautiful spring day to tell Lucien that story. A nearby maid gasps in absolute horror, knowing exactly what forbidden word she just triggered. It's the Marquis's legendary love story. Pernia plays it off flawlessly, saying her future husband absolutely needs to hear this crucial piece of family history. Her dad's eyes literally glow as he locks onto his new victim, launching into how he met his first love at age 5, while Lucien violently flinches. Smirking like an absolute mastermind, Pernia sneaks away, knowing her dad can yap for 48 hours straight. Lucien is completely held hostage by the endless rambling. Pernia mentally apologizes for throwing him to the wolves, but she's got places to be. She books it down the street, panting heavily until she hears someone call her name. It's Estelle, looking like an absolute angel in a flowy pink skirt. Pernia apologizes for running late, but Estelle just asks if everything is all right. Pernia pushes down the tiny bit of guilt she feels for ditching Lucien, claiming it was no big deal. Estelle giggles softly, relieved to hear it. Pernia stares at her, completely mesmerized by how gorgeous she is. Estelle flips the script and compliments Pernia, saying her makeup and pink ribbon look absolutely stunning against her skin. Pernia gets a bit self-conscious, asking if her face is puffy from late-night snacking, but Estelle assures her she looks perfect. Pernia totally melts, absolutely living for this top-tier bestie banter. They start looking at dress options, with Estelle suggesting muslin fabric instead of silk since summer is approaching. But then Estelle pauses, looking a little embarrassed. She confesses that she actually knows nothing about dresses, and this is her first time ever shopping for one in person. Pernia is shocked, asking how she's gotten her clothes until now, and Estelle innocently explains the priests just give them to her as gifts. Pernia connects the dots and silently curses the priests for forcing her into that ugly, worn-out outfit. Looking down, Estelle admits there's one more thing she needs to say. She clutches her purse, sadly confessing she didn't manage to save up enough money to buy a proper gown. But Pernia just smiles, telling her not to sweat it because she knows a shop with super affordable prices. She grabs Estelle's hand, telling her to just trust the process. Estelle's eyes light up with wonder as Pernia explains that the best dresses are always in hidden low-key spots. They arrive at a rather suspicious-looking door with a massive arched window. But when they step inside, the place is an absolute wreck, covered in scattered sketches. Estelle sweats, wondering if they just walked into a dumpster. Pernia points out the mannequins and fabric rolls, proving it's actually a working studio. And right in the center sits a stunning, highly sophisticated purple gown, proving this messy designer is actually a total genius. Pernia plays dumb about dresses as she leads Estelle into a fancy shop. The designer Chanel greets them with a sharp smile and asks what they need. With zero shame, Pernia asks for a near-perfect dress on a super cheap budget. Chanel laughs right in their faces, saying 300 gold coins won't even buy them cheap second-hand rags. But then she pauses, asking if they happen to be attending the Crown Prince's banquet. Pernia nods. Suddenly, Chanel's whole vibe flips. She calls them VIPs and offers to make both dresses completely free of charge. Estelle and Pernia look at her like she just grew a second head. Chanel raises a finger, adding one strict condition: she gets total creative control over the designs. All they have to do is show up to the royal banquet looking absolutely stunning in her work. Suspicious, Pernia asks what the catch is. Chanel immediately claims it's for shop promotion. She explains that having two gorgeous ladies wearing her dresses at the biggest event of the year is top-tier marketing. Pernia leans in, whispering to Estelle that this sounds like an absolute steal. But Estelle is too pure for this world, nervously admitting she feels bad not paying for someone's hard work. Estelle smoothly counters, explaining that the promo they provide is the payment. Estelle fidgets, still not totally convinced. Realizing logic isn't working, Pernia pivots, looking around the shop and gushing about how much she loves the style here. She completely fakes being disappointed, looking away with a dramatic sigh. Seeing her bestie sad instantly hits Estelle right in the guilt trip. She immediately caves, desperately agreeing to get their dresses made here so they can save money. Chanel bows gracefully, promising to deliver absolute masterpieces. Internally, Chanel is absolutely losing her mind over scoring the Saintess, while Pernia smirks like a total mastermind. The truth is, this place isn't some cheap hidden gem. It's actually a high-end workshop located in the wealthiest district in the capital. Pernia knew Estelle would reject an expensive gift, so she set up this massive 5D chess trap. Flashback to Pernia pulling up to the shop alone, demanding a custom order. Chanel immediately shuts her down, coldly stating her reservation list is fully booked. Pernia wasn't surprised at all, knowing Chanel is an elite designer for the nobles. But then she drops the ultimate bait, asking if Chanel would also reject the Saintess. Chanel freezes. She points out that the Saintess is famous for wearing tragic, out-of-fashion clothes to parties. Chanel argues that making a dress for her is a waste of time if she'll just refuse to wear it. Pernia vows to make her wear it, but Chanel crosses her arms, asking for proof. With absolute confidence, Pernia promises to bring the Saintess right to her doorstep. Hooked, Chanel asks how Pernia plans to pay for this grand scheme. Pernia totally flips the script, declaring she isn't paying a single coin because this is a business deal. Chanel's jaw drops as Pernia demands she make Estelle's dress for free. Back in the present, Pernia sips her tea, feeling like an absolute boss. She smiles, super proud that her mastermind moves made everything look like a total coincidence. Estelle steps out, praising the designer for being so thorough with her measurements. Pernia heads to the back room to get her turns. When she walks in, Chanel is literally trembling and crying like she just saw God. She is fangirling hard, rambling about how flawless, fragile, and absolutely divine Estelle looks up close. Throwing her hands to the ceiling, Chanel shouts that she is bursting with inspiration for the perfect, elegant design. She tries to sprint off to start sketching, but Pernia yanks her back by the collar. She deadpans that Chanel needs to measure her too. Chanel just stares blankly, totally forgetting she existed. While taking Pernia's measurements, Chanel smugly says she's lucky to get her work for only 300 gold coins. Pernia corrects her, calling it pure resourcefulness. She then reminds Chanel that their dresses need to have matching vibes. Chanel gets super serious, warning Pernia that her dress will be made of much cheaper fabric, so the Saintess stands out. Unbothered, Pernia completely agrees, telling her to just make sure Estelle's dress is a masterpiece. Outside, the measurements are finally done, and Chanel promises to contact them soon. But right before they leave, Estelle bows deeply and calls her Miss Chantalou. Chanel completely short-circuits at the mispronunciation while Pernia desperately tries not to burst out laughing. Pernia says her goodbyes, completely butchering the famous designer's name as she walks out, leaving Chanel absolutely flabbergasted. The two ladies arrive at a beautiful, newly opened cafe in town. Pernia gazes at the building, wishing she could cancel the rest of her day just to hang out longer. Luckily, Estelle turns to her, offering to treat her to tea and dessert as thanks for saving her so much money on the dress. Pernia happily accepts, and they hold hands like the ultimate bestie duo. Inside, the cafe is absolutely gorgeous, packed with elegant decor and fancy pastries. Pernia is admiring the aesthetic when something suddenly catches her eye. It's a stunning bright red cake topped with fresh strawberries and a literal rose. Estelle turns to her, asking if she's picked out what she wants to eat. Pernia points to tiny pastry with a hilariously long name about morning clouds after the rain. She takes one bite and is instantly mind-blown by how delicious it is, practically glowing with happiness. She offers Estelle a bite, but the Saintess politely declines, admitting she doesn't really have a sweet tooth. Pernia's eyes go wide as a sudden realization hits her. She remembers a critical detail from the original novel they are living in. The author totally set up Prince Calyx as the main love interest, but Pernia is a hardcore shipper of Estelle and Sir Lucien. Playing the ultimate Lucien, Pernia casually asks Estelle who she thinks would make a better husband. Estelle blushes and fidgets with her hands, nervously admitting she's never even thought about it. Pernia urges her to weigh her options. In her head, Pernia hypes up Lucien. He's beautiful, kind, and the strongest knight in the entire empire. Meanwhile, marrying the crown prince means dealing with some incredibly toxic in-law drama. Specifically, the Dowager Empress, who basically rules the palace since Calyx's mother passed away. The Empress is obsessed with rank and is absolutely ruthless toward anyone who steps out of line. In the original story, she literally kicks Estelle out of the palace after some snobby nobles insult her at a banquet. She is one of the worst villains, making Estelle's life miserable. But Pernia smiles to herself, confident that won't happen this time around because Estelle is going to be the most stunning lady in the room. Later, as they walk home, Estelle admits she never knew hanging out with friends could be this much fun. She cheerfully calls out Pernia's name. She grabs her hands, genuinely asking to do this again sometime. Pernia beams, saying she would absolutely love to. But suddenly, a massive chill runs down Pernia's spine. She turns around to find Lucian standing in the pitch black, radiating a terrifying, blood-red aura like a final boss. Pernia panics, convinced his dark corruption has already been triggered. She flinches back. Estelle hasn't even gotten close to the crown prince yet, so why is he going full Yandir mode right now? Her fight or flight kicks in, but she knows running away from the strongest knight is a total waste of time. But then Lucian drops the scary aura, casually peeking out and noting how dark it's gotten. He cheerfully explains that he was just telling the Marquis a story about a broken chandelier when the actual room's chandelier randomly broke. Wait, the Marquis talked the entire day away. Pernia realizes there's no way Lucian got corrupted while being held hostage by her dad's endless yapping. But looking closer, she spots his clenched jaw and pouty lips. He is definitely annoyed at her. Not taking any chances, Pernia aggressively bows at a perfect 90-degree angle, loudly apologizing. She dramatically calls herself the worst fiancée in the world for ditching him, threatening to skip dinner and face the wall to reflect on her crimes. Lucian immediately softens, telling her to stop. He admits he chose to visit her dad and she was just keeping a promise to a friend. Pernia peeks up, asking if he really means it, and he gently reassures her. Seizing the perfect opportunity, Pernia aggressively rummages through her shopping bag. She pulls out a neat little box and holds it out for him to take. Confused, Lucian asks what it is, and she casually mentions she saw it at the cafe and bought it just because it was pretty. He asks if he can open it, and she gives him the green light. Inside is that stunning red cake, topped with a real rose and dyed with expensive petal extract. Lucian is mesmerized by it but softly asks why she bought it specifically for him. He stares at her, waiting for the answer. Pernia flashes a bright smile, explaining that the second she saw the cake, it perfectly matched the color of his eyes. Lucian's entire demeanor melts into a soft, genuine beam as he thanks her, completely won over. After securing the bag, Pernia walks with Lucian, who looks like he still has a million things to say. To make up for abandoning him earlier, she offers to personally escort him back home in her carriage. Lucian tries to play the gentleman, insisting she doesn't need to do that since she must be exhausted. But Pernia waves him off, claiming she isn't tired at all and it's practically on her way anyway. Inside the carriage, Pernia gazes out the window, realizing they're making record time when Lucian softly calls her name. He asks if they can hop out and walk the rest of the way together. Pernia is completely caught off guard as Lucian admits he just wants to talk for a little bit longer. Strolling under the cherry blossoms, Pernia apologizes again, admitting she fully expected him to run for his life from her dad's endless yapping. But Lucian actually smiles, claiming her father was so passionate that he couldn't help but enjoy the stories. Pernia is absolutely dumbfounded. There is literally no way anyone enjoys those rants. Lucian chuckles, admitting it did get a bit rough when the Marquis forgot his place and completely restarted the story from age 5. Pernia practically spits out her metaphorical drink. Suddenly, Lucian turns the tables, asking if she had fun with her close friend that she shares a journal with. Pernia sweats buckets, looking like a caught criminal. She nervously admits they just went dress shopping and hung out at a cafe. She rubs the back of her neck, feeling super guilty but confessing that she actually had a really great time. Lucian's eyes dim slightly as he says he's incredibly curious about who this mystery bestie is. Pernia lights up, describing Estelle as super pretty and someone who constantly sparkles brightly. Lucian completely stops in his tracks. Looking slightly hurt, he reminds her that he was supposed to be the one who sparkles. Pernia's heart skips a beat, internally screaming over how ridiculously cute he's acting right now. Trying to play it cool, Lucian asks if she spent the money she borrowed from him on this new friend's clothes. She shakes her head. She flashes him a massive smile, excitedly revealing that she actually used the cash to buy a dress for herself. She explains she needed it for the Crown Prince's massive upcoming birthday banquet. She hypes up the purchase, noting she managed to commission the absolute best designer in the capital. She cups her cheeks, fully geeking out over how gorgeous the custom gown is going to look. But instantly, the vibe plummets. Lucian's eyes glow red as a deeply livid aura surrounds him. Pernia gasps, completely lost. His gaze turns absolute zero. Pernia frantically racks her brain, trying to figure out what she said to trigger him this time. Without missing a beat, Lucian steps closer and firmly declares that he will be her escort to the royal banquet. Pernia's mind races. In the original novel, Lucian totally skipped this event because it's basically a massive party for his ultimate love rival. Plus, the girl he canonically yearns for, Estelle, is going to be there. If he shows up, he'll instantly connect the dots and realize Estelle is the secret best friend she's been hiding. Pernia looks like she just got struck by lightning. Surrounded by an intense floral aura, Lucian asks if she's all right with him coming along. She nervously nods, but internally she is screaming that this is a total disaster waiting to happen. Fast forward to the big day. The royal palace is looking absolutely massive for the crown prince's 18th birthday. The narrator notes that it's super rare for an imperial heir like Calyx to still be single at this age. As a maid fixes her hair, Pernia knows exactly why. Calyx simply hasn't found a woman worthy of being crown princess yet. That makes the guest list a total dead giveaway. The banquet is basically swarming with young, unmarried noblewomen. Realistically, this whole party is just an extravagant matchmaking event for the future emperor. Her maid finishes up, casually mentioning that every dress shop in the capital sold out because the girls are going so hard to impress him. And then there's Pernia. She steps out in the most incredibly mediocre, frumpy pink and blue dress you've ever seen. But Pernia is absolutely hyped. It's the ultimate NPC outfit, perfect for blending into the background. Her maid looks totally defeated, pointing out that this cheap style completely washes her out. She argues that Pernia's fierce features demand sharp eyeliner and heavy makeup, which totally clashes with this plain, pastel disaster. The maid literally begs her to change into something, anything else. But Pernia just laughs it off, totally refusing. She does a little evil gremlin dance, buzzing with excitement because today is all about letting Estelle shine and absolutely wrecking the villainous side characters. She giggles behind her hands, knowing the crown prince won't be able to take his eyes off the saintess either. Suddenly, a servant announces that Sir Lucian has arrived. Pernia's smile drops. Things would be so much smoother if he had just stayed home. She's terrified of how he's going to react when he finally discovers she's been secretly besties with the girl he supposedly loves. But what really has her sweating is the ultimate love triangle showdown. She clutches her head in absolute panic. If Lucian sees a stunningly dressed Estelle standing next to his rival Calyx, he might literally snap and go fully corrupt today. Lucian announces his arrival, completely interrupting her internal panic attack. He steps into the room, looking absolutely breathtaking in a sleek, dark suit. Pernia's jaw drops as she realizes he actually wore the suit she gifted him. Lucian gives a soft laugh, asking if he looks like he's sparkling prettily today. Internally, Pernia is absolutely losing her mind. He looks so good she can barely handle it, giving him an aggressive mental thumbs up. Satisfied, Lucian escorts her to the carriage and they set off for the palace. Inside, he looks at her with an incredibly soft expression. Pernia starts sweating, feeling like he's hardcore flirting with her. But she quickly shakes her head, reminding herself that the only person he supposedly flirts with is Estelle. She clenches her dress, debating if she should just confess her secret friendship now. Taking a deep breath, she turns to face him. Looking incredibly nervous, she begins to drop the bomb about the friend she was shopping with. Lucian leans in, totally confused as to why she's suddenly bringing this up. She stammers slightly, trying to find the courage. And then she drops the name Estelle the Saintess. Pernia grips her dress so hard her knuckles turn white. She expects him to snap, get suspicious, or completely freak out. Instead, Lucian just blinks and casually says, "I see." Pernia's brain basically blue screens. Why isn't he reacting? She desperately asks if he already knew. He calmly confirms it. Shocked, she asks how, and he simply says Paul told him. Pernia squints, her brain running through the files like a supercomputer. Who on earth is Paul? Suddenly, a light bulb goes off. She remembers the massive knight who usually trails behind Lucian like a shadow. She realizes they were holding hands in public while shopping, so the knight must have totally spotted them. But she still can't shake the weird feeling. Is he really okay with her hanging out with the love of his life? Before she can ask, Lucian changes the subject, noting that she looks completely different today. Pernia beams, happy he noticed her style change. She stands up, doing a little spin and asking if she doesn't look much better. But inside, she's actually crying. She knows this dress is a complete disaster, but his lack of reaction stings more than she thought. Fast forward to the banquet, they immediately bump into Crown Prince Calyx. Pernia scowls in the background, feeling completely ignored while the main characters chat. She stares at the prince, wondering why a guy with such a pretty face always looks so absolutely miserable. Calyx shoots Lucian a dead-eyed stare, immediately accusing him of only showing up because he heard the Saintess would be here. Pernia practically rolls her eyes. She totally expected this level of messy drama between the love rivals. But Lucian completely shuts him down, smoothly stating he is only here as an escort for his fiancé. Pernia's eye twitches. She's convinced Calyx thinks she isn't even worth escorting and that Lucian is just using her as an excuse. Calyx genuinely looks completely thrown off by Lucian's answer. But then the real tension starts. Lucian slowly turns around, looking towards the entrance. Pernia holds her breath, wondering what face he'll make when he finally sees Estelle. She nervously glances over. Estelle walks in, immediately rushing over to Pernia with a bright, beautiful smile, relieved she found her in the massive crowd. Both Lucian and Calyx are absolutely stunned by her presence, while Pernia awkwardly laughs, caught right in the middle. Pernia gently calls her name. Estelle looks at her, totally clueless to the insane tension around them. Calyx immediately stiffens and gives a formal greeting, but Estelle just happily waves at Lucian like they're old pals. Estelle then turns to Pernia, loudly praising how beautiful she looks, saying the elegant dress suits her even better than her usual extravagant ones. Suddenly that same terrifying, bone-chilling aura returns. Pernia instantly breaks a sweat. She internally screams, knowing Lucian is furious that she bought a cheap dress just to make Estelle look better by comparison. Oblivious to the deadly aura, Calyx stares at Estelle, bluntly noting she finally threw away that rag she used to wear. He smirks, noting that for someone who usually avoids royals and aristocrats, she's really groveling to a noble lady today. Both Pernia and Estelle completely freeze, looking at him like he just sprouted horns. Pernia is absolutely stunned by his lack of social awareness. The guy has a serious talent for being obnoxious. Even Calyx realizes he messed up, looking slightly panicked by the sudden silence. Refusing to deal with his nonsense, Estelle grabs Pernia by the arm, loudly declaring she has something important to tell her in private. Calyx literally trembles, totally wrecked that she's walking away. Pernia gives a quick, awkward bow before getting dragged off. But before they leave, Estelle turns back and drops the ultimate hammer, telling Lucian he isn't allowed to follow them either. Lucian looks like his entire world just shattered. Pernia gets completely dragged away by Estelle, laughing nervously as she's pulled from the heavy tension of the main hall. Once they reach a quiet room, Estelle stops and admits she felt super awkward with all those intense stares. She turns to Pernia with a bright smile, revealing she actually pulled her away to give her a secret gift. Estelle holds out her hands, revealing an absolutely gorgeous, jewel-encrusted butterfly hairpin. She asks if Pernia likes it, and Pernia basically breaks her neck, nodding yes. With stars in her eyes, Pernia says it's 100% her aesthetic, but asks what the sudden present is for. Estelle gently places the pin in her hands, softly admitting she knows exactly why Pernia is wearing such a plain dress today. Pernia literally drops the hairpin in pure shock. Estelle explains she was completely oblivious at first. But she connected the dots at the dress shop, realizing Pernia intentionally picked a mediocre design just to make Estelle shine. So behind her back, Estelle asked the designer to find a piece of jewelry that would perfectly elevate Pernia's look. She gives a warm, angelic smile, saying it's nothing compared to Pernia's kindness, but she just really wanted to repay her. Touched, Pernia slides the pin into her hair and it instantly ties the whole outfit together. Estelle absolutely beams, praising how gorgeous she looks. Pernia blushes hard, completely caught off guard. She never expected the main heroine to make her heart flutter this much. She thanks Estelle but tells her not to feel indebted, admitting she just wanted to see her bestie in a dress that actually did her justice. The two share a wholesome moment, but suddenly an unfamiliar voice echoes through the room. Three snobby noblewomen step out from the shadows, smirking and calling them a couple of squeaking mice. Pernia instantly glares, annoyed that their sweet moment just got crashed by the mean girl squad. The pink-haired leader mocks their matching pastel outfits, sneering that a commoner and the daughter of a ruined noble family make the perfect pathetic pair. But instead of getting mad, Pernia totally flips the script. She grabs Estelle's hands and cheerfully celebrates that their matching friendship outfits are clearly working. Before the bullies can even process the ultimate disrespect of being ignored, a servant announces the arrival of the Dowager Empress. Pernia gulps, The Dowager Empress is the absolute final boss of toxic mother-in-laws, and there's no avoiding her. The mean girls instantly scramble back to the main hall, and Pernia and Estelle quietly follow. Standing in the center of the room, the Empress looks like she just stepped out of a high society soap opera, fanning herself with pure judgment. Pernia remembers the novel's plot. The Empress absolutely despised Estelle for casually hanging around the palace despite her commoner status. And just like in the original story, both Calyx and Lucian are nowhere to be seen. The girls are completely on their own. With no backup, Pernia and Estelle step forward, delivering flawless, formal curtsies to the Empress. The Empress stares them down, hiding her mouth behind her fan as the tension thickens. Suddenly, she projects her voice to the entire room, announcing that an unworthy person is polluting the Crown Prince's celebration. She glares directly at them, asking how they could dare show up in a dress that insults the royal family. Pernia smirks internally. She knows the Empress wanted to humiliate Estelle, but since Estelle looks absolutely flawless today, the target has to change. But suddenly, Pernia jolts in pure shock as the Empress loudly calls out her name instead. The Empress ruthlessly targets Pernia, publicly shaming the Lilac family's financial struggles and calling her dress something not even a street peasant would wear. Lowering her fan, the Empress locks eyes with Pernia, furiously accusing her of intentionally mocking the entire empire with her cheap outfit.